We interrupt our program to bring you a special broadcast. The German news agency Transocean said today in a broadcast.
Here's another late development, and this news keeps coming in as we're talking here.
What's up, Kryptonians? I hope everybody's enjoying their weekend. Today, I am going to be talking a little bit more in depth about one of my favorite movies of 2022, Avatar: The Way of Water. Avatar: The Way of Water came out on December 16th, I think, and it's been out in theaters for almost a month now. I think this is its fourth weekend. So that is a spoiler warning to anybody who has not yet seen Avatar: The Way of Water. I am going to be getting into depth about the details of this movie. Full spoilers, so if you haven't seen the movie, I would suggest you don't watch this video, or maybe you don't give a shit about spoilers, in which case, either way, welcome to the channel. Please leave a like or subscribe to the channel if you want to see more awesome, corny ass content. Kind of want to address a small little joke that I keep seeing pop up online. For some reason, people have like some kind of blind hysteria when it comes to the Na'vi and their reproductive organs. I saw somebody tweeting about this a few days ago. They were just like, I don't understand. They have all these kids. How did they fuck? And I'm like, did your parents not have the talk with you? The memes are getting a little bit too weird, and people seem to think that they fuck using their hair. People, the Na'vi fuck just like we do. Stop trying to create some extra weird alien way that the Na'vi fuck. They have sex the same way that we do. Now, while they're having sex, do they sometimes like take their hair things and like connect it while they're having sex? I mean, I don't know. I'm not gonna kink shame, but that could be something that some of them are into. But please keep in mind their hair thing, that's like an extension of their brains, okay? That's like their nervous system. They don't fuck using that. I don't know. I wanted to take a second to address that because it's funny, but it's kind of weird. Moving into the actual movie, one of the things I do love about this movie is the synergy that it has with the original movie that came out in 2009. And James Cameron has definitely done this before, but I love it when he repurposes lines and moments from the first movie and uses them again in the second movie. This time in the second movie, it's been switched around or given to a different character, or it's given a different context than the line or the moment was in the first movie. What about when Jake is trying to explain to the Amatakaya in the first movie that he knew about this plot to destroy Home Tree and he's trying to get them to leave their home? He starts off what he's about to say by saying, these words are like stones in my heart. And if you transition to the second film, during the scene where Jake is giving up his title as the Oletakan leader of the Na'vi, he says, this is like stones in my heart. It's the same dialogue, but it's just kind of switched around and given a new context. One of the more powerful moments is in the first film, the first conversation that Jake and Neytiri really have. It's after she saves his life from all of those little viper beasts or whatever that show up, and he's like, why would you save me? And she says, you have a strong heart, no fear. Well, after that devastating loss in the third act of Way of Water, where they lose their son and Neytiri is losing her shit, and Jake is trying to get her to refocus because Quaritch has their daughters on a sinking ship, he says, I need you to be strong right now. I need you to have strong heart. Strong heart. And it was just a very powerful callback to that conversation. And I like little moments like that that are peppered throughout this film because it just links perfectly with the first film and creates a more emotional experience for me. You could also look at this film and say that it has some pretty good synergy to some of James Cameron's other movies. Again, he's done this before, but if you look at this movie, a lot of it takes place underwater, but a lot of it kind of focuses on the relationship between a father and his son. If you notice during the movie, Jake and Lo'ak are kind of butting heads throughout it. Jake is the hardest on Lo'ak, and there is a reason for that. Obviously, the end finale is kind of like Titanic in the sense that there's a big ship that's going down and sinking, and everybody is like trying to find a way to survive. Speaking of Lo'ak and Jake, the reason why Jake is the hardest on Lo'ak is because Lo'ak, of all of his kids, is the one that reminds him the most of him. Everything about Jake's personality and his actions in the first movie, that's kind of how Lo'ak is in this movie. He's the one of the kids that is the most similar to Jake, so Jake is hardest on him because he sees his flaws reflected back in his face. It creates a very powerful moment at the end of the film when Lo'ak, using what makes him different, saves his father's life, and his father finally, for the first time, is able to look past his flaws and say, I see you, son. Even the scene underwater in this movie when Lo'ak is going up against this gigantic ass Akula monster or whatever, it's very similar to Jake when he gets to the forest and he gets chased by that gigantic viper hound or whatever that thing is. So I like the synergy, I like the way that this movie linked up, and I like all of those little different ways that James Cameron was able to mesh everything together. It created something very wholesome for me. Speaking of wholesome, I love all of the kids in this movie. The kids play a huge role. I love the fact that the kids save the parents at the end of the movie. The entire movie, the parents being worried about their safety. I like the fact that the kids are the ones who are basically the heroes of the third third act. Loak, Took, Neteyam, Kiri, I love all of them. They all bring something different to the table. I would actually say my favorite part of the sequel is Jake and Neytiri and them as parents and how they compare and contrast to each other. I think it's kind of awesome that Jake was this headstrong, leap before you look type of character. He was always this brash, impulsive guy. And now as a parent, all these years later, 15 years later to be exact, he has to be a lot more patient and a lot more cautious, and it causes him to like go against what he would normally do in situations like this. But ironically, he still has less patience when it comes to actually parenting his kids, you know, because he was a military guy. He's used to military discipline. He's used to following orders, and that's how you survive. Well, you have kids. Kids are a little bit more complicated than soldiers in a squadron, which is what Neytiri reminds him of at the beginning of the movie. But even then, you see the look in his face when he tells her, I thought we almost lost them. It's all motivated by a fear of losing his family, the one thing that he cares about more than anything else now. And the patience that Jake doesn't have with some of the kids, Neytiri has that patience with the kids. She's very compassionate, very understanding. She's there for moral and emotional support all the way through. When it comes to the life or death situations or the big decisions that are made in the movie, you can tell that Neytiri is struggling with this patience thing. Neytiri is a proud, fierce warrior. She's not used to running. She's not used to hiding. She's used to dealing with problems directly. She has to kind of go along and support her husband because she realizes the more important thing is protecting the family. You can tell that she's bothering her. Remember when they first showed up at the Metkayina village and they're trying to convince Renal that they should be let in? Do you see the way she reacted when Renal was trying to call out the family? She was like, excuse me, my husband is Taruk Makto. Do you know who the fuck my man is? Who the fuck do you think you're talking to?
What the fuck is up with this shit here?
I was sitting there in the theater like, oh hell, she about to get them kicked out and they ain't even get accepted in yet. Either way, I like that little compare and contrast between patience and between parenting. It's kind of funny if you look at the third act of the movie because Neytiri gets to let out all of this pent up frustration and energy that she's kept bottled up. She kicks a ton of ass in that third act. Her and Jake do, but especially her. It was like Kobe Shaq and she was Shaq. But then if you look at the end, she really wants to kill Quaritch. Like he says, I owe you a death. And she's looking at him and she's like, I'm not about to leave here without you dead. But then her kids are pulling her away from the fight. They're like, come on, mom, please, come on. And I think that's a great moment here because ironically at the end, it's Neytiri who is backing away from the fight and realizing that there are more important things as far as taking care of her kids. But it's Jake who has avoided the fight the entire movie, is the one who leaps into action and tries to kill Quaritch. And let's be honest, if it weren't for Spider, he would have succeeded. I hope this gets addressed in an extended cut. Like almost all of my nitpicks with this movie, I hope are addressed in an extended cut or in a future movie. I wish that we had included a couple more scenes of Neytiri in the middle of the movie because while Jake and the kids are learning how to adapt to the Metkayina way, I'm like, what is Neytiri doing? Like, why do we not cut to see what Neytiri is doing this whole time? So I am left to conclude that they just decided to teach her how to cook ocean food. Like every time I see her, she's in the house and she's cooking. So sure, I mean, you know, if she's gonna be like learning that from the Metkayina, that's fine. But I'm just like, did she ever participate in learning the way of the water? She clearly knows how to breathe underwater, so has she been taught this stuff, but like secretly, off screen? I don't know, I thought that was kind of weird. I think we come to the two most controversial elements of the film, which is Quaritch and Spider. Quaritch, who is brought back, like I said, in a recom Na'vi body, and Spider, obviously his son, but it's an estranged relationship because his son does not know him. There's like a tiny scene of them bonding over him teaching him the Na'vi language. In my spoiler-free review that I had an issue with certain characters and how they weren't fleshed out enough. This is the relationship that I was talking about the most. I feel like they should have added a scene or two of them going through some adventures on Pandora, trying to find Jake and Neytiri. They should have added a couple more scenes of Quaritch and Spider bonding, really developing that connection, because then the decisions that they make in the third act, in my opinion, it just would have hit a lot harder. At the end, Neytiri threatens to kill the kid, and I do have a question for the audience. Was Neytiri actually going to kill him? I don't know. I think that's an interesting question, but either way, she threatens to kill Spider, and obviously the Colonel, because it is his son, he doesn't want his son to get killed, so he eventually lets go of Kiri, and you know, that's how the scene plays out. And then at the end, Jake kills Quaritch. Quaritch is basically dead. He's suffocating underwater. The only reason he wasn't dead sooner is because I think the Na'vi have like expanded lung capacity or something. And then Spider was just like, ah, fuck. And then he's like, he saves his life. Spider goes back to the Na'vi at the end of the movie. So I do think this sets up some interesting stuff in the future, like Avatar 3, Avatar 4, whatever. But I just feel like if you had put an extra scene or two in the movie of them bonding, I feel like it would have felt more like a, oh, father and son actually care about each other, as opposed to, you scratched my back, I'll scratch yours. I'll save you because you saved my life. That's what it felt like in the beginning of the movie, where Neytiri's like, he should be with his own kind. And she clearly, of all of the family members, is the one that does not trust and does not show any kind of love towards Spider. To be honest, when you look at what the humans have taken from her, I mean, her older sister was killed. I mean, she lost her father in the fall of Home Tree. Obviously in this movie, rest in peace to the boy Neteyam. Neteyam gets shot and killed at the end of this film. But you don't really blame her for how she feels about humans at this point, but that tension, that confrontation between Spider and Neytiri, I feel like James left that hanging because he's gonna address that in a future movie. I also have kind of an unanswered question about the mech hyenas. So when the final battle starts, the mech hyena are there and they're attacking the humans and it's full chaos and it's amazing. And then at a certain point in the battle, the mech hyena just like disappear from the movie. Like they're just gone and you don't see them again until the end of the movie when they're burying Neteyam underwater. And I was just, the whole time I was sitting there in the theater, I was just like, where did they go? Did all of them die other than Tonowari and Renal? Like, where'd the rest of the fucking... They just disappeared from the movie. It's not really that big a deal to me because I think you could fix this with like a line of dialogue or something. You could have just had Jake tell Tonowari and Renal, hey, fall back, gather your wounded. Me and my kids, our family, we will get your daughter out of there. It would have been easy for that. Like Jake would have been like, hey, if we're in a smaller group, we have a better chance of taking them by surprise and getting the kids out safely. So take your wounded, fall back, and we'll handle this. Like you could fix this with a line of dialogue. Most of my unanswered questions also revolve around Kiri. Kiri in this movie, Kiri is an Eywa baby. Essentially, Eywa is her father because she was born immaculately from Grace's avatar. She has this deeper connection to Eywa and to nature, to the animals, and it's just kind of freaking her out throughout the entire movie. But this also means that she has some ability to like manipulate and control environments. We see that a little bit in the third act when she saves her and Arnold and the other kid from the humans that are chasing them. I guess my question with her is, okay, she's basically like a demigoddess, right? Like what else can she do? What are the limits exactly of her power? I hope this is explored in Avatar 3 for sure. Also, like what happens if Kiri eventually gets pregnant one day? Like what if she has a baby? Does this mean that her child is gonna be an Eywa baby as well? It's gonna create like a new subspecies culture of the Na'vi where it's gonna be like, these are Eywa Na'vi. These are Na'vi that like have this godlike power within them and they can like manipulate and control things involving Pandora. Like, I don't know. I find all of that fascinating. We got a lot of exciting stuff coming up for sequels. James has said that the third film will focus on the Fire Na'vi. He also specifically said that he's only shown the Na'vi from the positive viewpoint so far. And in the future, he's gonna show the Na'vi from another viewpoint. He's gonna show the darker, more evil side of the Na'vi. Putting aside the obvious Last Airbender jokes that are going to come because now all of a sudden there's a Fire Nation of the Na'vi, I will remind people, The Last Airbender, while it is the most popular modern adaptation of elemental storytelling, it is not the only example. It is not the first one, obviously. I wonder if there's like a subterranean version of the Na'vi, or if there's a version of the Na'vi that live on one of the moons of Pandora, or I don't know, is there a mountain version of the Na'vi? Like, I'm just kind of fascinated how many cultures of the Na'vi actually exist on Pandora. I want to see how the family is going to react to Quaritch being alive, and if this is going to continue to drive tension between Spider and his family. I want to see if Spider is going to get like a Na'vi body himself. Is he going to get his own avatar? It's clear that he wants to be a member of the Na'vi. And now that Quaritch has a legitimate reason to not attack the Na'vi because he has a son, I mean, that just kind of makes me curious about that. Like, is Quaritch going to become an anti-hero now? I do think it would be kind of lazy for James to bring him back as the main antagonist when so much is changed about his character now through 2 movies. So I'm hoping that we actually get an antagonist that has to do with the Na'vi, like he seems to be hinting at. And he said Avatar 4 and 5 are insane and that we could be going to other planets. I think he said for a fact that the 5th one is supposed to take place on Earth. You guys know the human characters in this movie you don't really give a shit about, but there's this one character named Garvin. It's clear that Garvin hates his life and hates what he's being forced to do in the name of science. There's some funny moment at the end. Payakan is like messing up their ship and he's like about to attack their ship or whatever. He's like talking shit to the skipper. I don't forget his name, Scoresby or whatever. I get why you're talking shit. That guy's a piece of shit. I would probably talk shit too. Sir, are you not on the boat with him? Like if Payakan destroys the boat, Do you not get killed too? Why are you celebrating this? Are you suicidal? Is there something you need to tell us? Either way, those are really my sprawled out thoughts on Avatar: Way of Water. I've seen the movie multiple times now. I really love the film. I think it's better than the first one in nearly every way, other than a couple of small areas. What were some of your reactions to this movie, and what do you think about the series going forward now that we know we're gonna get the other movie? And for anybody still arguing that this movie doesn't have any cultural relevance after it's gonna make almost $2 billion at the box office, 13 years after the original made almost $3 billion. Cope, I guess, if it makes you feel better. Please like and subscribe to the Superfan Show, and if you like what you see, tell me how you feel, and stay tuned to hear more from the Man of Steel. Peace.